A fortune teller's bizarre warning haunted me. If I washed my floors while my husband was away, he'd forget the way home. I thought it was nonsense until his texts began to confirm her impossible prophecy. It felt like the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. I'd laughed right there in that stuffy little apartment that smelled of cat food and old incense. My friend Chloe had dragged me to see this woman, Madame Zora, as a birthday gag gift. Zora had these huge, cloudy eyes and hands like bundles of twigs wrapped in crepe paper skin. She'd laid out the tarot cards on a stained velvet cloth, humming to herself as she flipped them over. She told me the usual stuff long life, good health, a surprising financial windfall in my future. All very generic, very safe. I was about to thank her and leave when her eyes suddenly sharpened, focusing on me with an unnerving intensity. She'd tapped a long yellowed nail on the 9 of Swords card. "Your husband," she'd rasped. "He travels for his work, yes?" I nodded. My husband, David, was a consultant for an engineering firm. He was gone for a week or two every other month. It was the only part of our otherwise perfect marriage that I hated. "Yes," I said. "He's in Chicago right now, actually." Her gaze drifted down, past my face, past my knees, to the floor of her own cluttered apartment. "When he is away," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you must never, ever wash the floors of your home. Do you understand me, Maria?" I'd blinked, completely thrown. Of all the spooky warnings a fortune teller could give, this was by far the weirdest. "I'm sorry, what? Don't wash the floors?" "Never," she insisted, leaning forward so I could smell the stale coffee on her breath. "The water, it cleanses. It washes away the energy, the scent, the path. You will wash away his trail back to you. You will make him forget the way home." Chloe had snorted with laughter beside me, and I couldn't help but join in. It was absurd. Forget the way home because I mopped the kitchen? David had GPS. He had a plane ticket. He had a key. But Madame Zora hadn't cracked a smile. She just gathered her cards with a sigh, as if pitying my ignorance. "Heed my words," she'd said, and that was that. Now, 3 months later, David was packing his suitcase for a 10-day trip to Singapore. A huge deal was on the line, a career-making project. I watched him fold his shirts with meticulous precision, my heart doing that familiar little ache it always did when he was about to leave. He caught me staring and smiled that easy, confident smile that had made me fall for him in the first place. "Don't look so sad," he said, pulling me into his arms. "I'll be home before you know it, and I'll call you every single day." "I know," I murmured into his chest, breathing in his scent. "I just miss you already." The first few days were fine. I kept myself busy with work, had dinner with Chloe, and binged a new show on Netflix. But our house, a beautiful 2-story colonial we'd bought 2 years ago, felt cavernously empty without him. It was our dream home, but his absence made the familiar rooms feel strange and hollow. By day 4, I was starting to feel the itch. I'm what you might call a stress cleaner. When I'm anxious or lonely, I clean, I organize, I put things in order because it's the only thing I can control. And the floors, they were starting to get to me. A few dust bunnies were gathering under the sofa. A small, sticky patch from a drop of juice was near the fridge. I could see the faint outline of footprints in the high traffic area between the living room and the kitchen. Every time I looked at them, Madame Zora's ridiculous warning would pop into my head. "You will wash away his path back to you." I'd scoff and tell myself how stupid it was. It was a joke, a party trick. But the words had planted a tiny, insidious seed of doubt in my mind. On day 6, I was on the phone with David. The connection was crackly, the delay agonizing. He sounded exhausted but exhilarated. The meetings were going well, but he was working around the clock. "I miss you like crazy," he said, his voice faint across the thousands of miles. "I can't wait to get home and just hold you." "I miss you too," I said, my eyes landing on a clump of dog hair near the baseboards. The house is a mess without you. Well, you know what to do about that, he chuckled, my little cleaning tornado. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the linoleum. It wasn't even that dirty, not really. But I knew it wasn't clean. The knowledge of it sat under my skin, an irritation I couldn't scratch. It was illogical. It was superstitious nonsense. David would laugh himself sick if he knew I was even considering it. That evening, while making a sandwich, I fumbled the jar of mustard. It slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor, splattering a disgusting yellow mess in every direction. Little shards of glass were mixed in with the pungent goo. I couldn't just leave it there. I couldn't just wipe it up with a paper towel. The glass made it too dangerous. It needed a proper, thorough cleaning. It needed water. It needed a mop. This is it, I thought. This is my permission slip. It's not a choice anymore. It's a necessity. My heart started to beat a little faster as I went to the utility closet. I pulled out the bucket, the mop, the bottle of lemon-scented floor cleaner. As I filled the bucket at the sink, the running water sounded unnaturally loud in the silent house. With a deep breath, I plunged the mop into the soapy water, telling myself over and over that I was being a rational adult. I started with the mustard spill, the mop making a satisfying swoosh as it erased the yellow stain. The clean, lemony scent filled the air, cutting through the anxiety I'd been feeling all week. It felt so good, so right. One clean spot just made the rest of the floor look dingier. Before I knew it, I was mopping the entire kitchen, then the hallway. I was a woman possessed, pushing the mop back and forth, washing away the dust, the footprints, the last few days of lonely stagnation. I was washing away his path. The thought made me laugh out loud at its own absurdity. I was finishing up the living room, feeling triumphant and sane, when I heard it. A single sharp crack from across the room. It wasn't the house settling. It was high-pitched and violent. I froze, the mop handle clutched in my hand. My eyes darted around the room and landed on the mantelpiece above the fireplace. Resting there, in a heavy silver frame, was our wedding photo. We were smiling, deliriously happy. But now, a thin, jagged line snaked its way across the glass, starting from the top and running directly through David's smiling face. My breath hitched in my throat. I dropped the mop with a clatter, the plastic handle echoing in the now silent room. My feet were frozen to the damp floor as I stared at the photo. It was impossible. The frame was thick, the glass heavy. There was no reason for it to just spontaneously crack. I crept closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. I ran a trembling finger over the fracture. It was real, a sharp, ugly scar dissecting my husband's image. Coincidence? It had to be a coincidence. A temperature change, a flaw in the glass, anything but the insane ramblings of a back-alley fortune teller. I snatched the frame off the mantel, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I had to get it out of my sight. I wrapped it in a dish towel and buried it at the bottom of the linen closet, behind the spare blankets, as if hiding it would undo the damage. I needed to hear David's voice. I needed the reassurance that he was fine, that this was all in my head. My hands were still slick with lemony soap as I fumbled for my phone. It was after 2 a.m., in Singapore, but I didn't care. I hit his contact and pressed the phone to my ear, listening to the hollow digital rings echo across the globe. He picked up on the 5th ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Maria, baby, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. He was fine. He sounded like himself. "I'm sorry," I stammered, sinking onto a kitchen chair. "I'm so sorry to wake you. I had a bad dream. I needed to hear you." "It's okay," he mumbled, his voice already softening as he drifted back to sleep. "Go back to bed, honey. Everything's fine." There was a pause, and then he added, "Hey, quick question. It's silly, but what color did we decide to paint the shutters? I was just thinking about it. Was it the dark green or the navy?" I frowned. It was a bizarre question for the middle of the night. We'd had the shutters painted dark forest green over a year ago. He'd been the one to pick the final shade. "Green," I said slowly. "Hunter green. You loved it, remember?" "Oh, right, green," he repeated, his voice sounding distant and unconvinced. "Okay, I love you. Talk tomorrow." The line went dead. I sat in the silent kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear. He didn't remember the color of our shutters. It was a small thing, a tiny detail, but combined with the cracked photo, it felt like a sinkhole opening up in my stomach. Madame Zora's voice whispered in my mind, "It washes away the energy, the scent, the path." The next day was a blur of anxiety. I called Chloe and told her everything, the warning, the mopping, the cracked photo, the weird phone call. She listened patiently before letting out a long sigh. "Maria, honey, you need to get a grip," she said, her voice full of frustratingly gentle logic. "David is overworked and jet-lagged. He probably hasn't even seen your house in daylight for weeks, and old houses make noises, things break. You're lonely and you're letting a con artist's lucky guess get into your head. Please, just relax." Her rationality felt like a slap in the face. She didn't understand. She hadn't seen the crack in the glass or heard the strange emptiness in David's voice. I felt utterly alone. That evening, I walked into the living room and stopped dead. There, in the very center of the floor I had scrubbed spotless less than 24 hours earlier, was a single, perfect footprint. It was muddy, the tread of a man's work boot clearly defined on my gleaming hardwood. It was David's size. But David was on the other side of the world. I hadn't left the house. No one had been over. I rushed back to the utility closet, my hands shaking as I grabbed a sponge and a spray bottle of cleaner. This was not happening. It was a trick of the light, a figment of my sleep-deprived imagination. I knelt down and sprayed the footprint, scrubbing at it furiously with the sponge. The mud and grime dissolved, and the wood underneath shone clean. I sighed with relief, my shoulders slumping. See? A hallucination. That's all. I stood up and turned to put the cleaner away. When I turned back, my blood ran cold. The footprint was back, fainter this time, like a watermark, a ghost of the mud that was there before, but it was unmistakably there. I felt a scream building in my throat, a hysterical, panicked sound. I was losing my mind. I scrubbed it again, harder this time, my nails digging into the sponge. I put my whole body into it, erasing the ghostly mark until there was nothing left but clean, polished wood. I backed away slowly, my eyes locked on the spot, daring it to reappear. For a full minute, nothing happened. It was gone. It was over. I was just letting my fear run away with me. Just as that rational thought began to soothe my frayed nerves, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text message from David. My heart leaped, hoping for a normal, loving message that would dispel all this madness. I snatched it up and unlocked the screen. The message consisted of a single photo. It was a picture of an airport departures board. The city names were a blur, but the word "canceled" was lit up in stark red next to half the flights. Underneath the photo, he had typed just two words that made the entire world drop out from under me. Wrong way! Panic seized me. Wrong way! What did that even mean? I tried calling him immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail, a sterile, automated voice telling me the customer was unavailable. I called again and again. Voicemail. My mind raced, trying to piece together a rational explanation. Maybe his connecting flight was canceled and he was rerouting. Maybe it was just a poor choice of words, an odd joke. But in the cold, silent house, with the ghost of a muddy footprint haunting my floor, I knew it wasn't a joke. The superstitious dread I'd been trying to suppress came crashing down on me like a tidal wave. You will wash away his trail back to you. You will make him forget the way home. I had to do something. Sitting here, staring at the walls, was not an option. My gaze landed on the mantelpiece, on the empty space where our wedding photo used to be. The scent. Madame Zora had mentioned the scent. I scrambled up the stairs to our bedroom, my mind a frantic blur. I threw open David's closet. His smell, a mix of his cologne, laundry detergent, and just him enveloped me. It was the scent of home, of safety. I grabbed the wool sweater he always wore on long flights, the one I'd been meaning to wash but hadn't gotten around to. I pulled his worn leather boots out from under the bed, the ones he wore to work on site, the ones that matched the phantom footprint on my floor. I ran back downstairs, clutching these pieces of him like talismans. It felt completely insane. I was a modern woman with a college degree, and I was about to perform some kind of ritual based on the advice of a woman who smelled like cat food. But logic had deserted me. All I had left was a terrifying, primal fear. I took his boots and walked a path from the living room through the hallway and straight to our front door, pressing the soles firmly into the wood. I was trying to relay the trail to give him a scent to follow. Then I took his sweater and draped it over the doorknob of the front door, a beacon of familiarity. I didn't stop there. I grabbed the unwashed bed sheets, his worn t-shirt from the laundry hamper, anything that held his essence, and I laid them out, creating a path from the front door to our bedroom. My beautiful, clean house now looked like a disaster zone, littered with my husband's dirty laundry. I didn't care. For the next 2 days, I lived in a state of suspended terror. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I just sat on the sofa, my phone clutched in my hand, waiting. I didn't touch the floors. I let dust gather. I spilled coffee and left the sticky ring on the hardwood. I walked around in my shoes, tracking in dirt from the garden. The house became a shrine to grime and memory. I sent David dozens of texts pleading, questioning, telling him I loved him. None were delivered. His phone was off. His office hadn't heard from him. He had checked out of his hotel in Singapore, but he had never checked in for his flight. He was simply gone. On the third day, just as the last sliver of my hope was starting to fade, I heard it. The sound of a key fumbling in the front door lock. My heart stopped. It couldn't be. I stumbled into the hallway, my body trembling. The door swung open, and there he was. David. He looked terrible. His suit was rumpled, his hair was a mess, and there were dark, exhausted circles under his eyes. But it was him. He was home. He dropped his suitcase on the floor and just stared at me. "Maria," he whispered, his voice cracking. I ran to him, throwing my arms around his neck and sobbing into his shoulder. He held me tightly, burying his face in my hair. "I'm so sorry," he kept murmuring. "I'm so sorry." Later, sitting at the kitchen table amidst the clutter of my makeshift ritual, he told me what happened. After that strange call about the shutters, he'd felt disoriented. He left the hotel for the airport, but he couldn't shake a profound sense of confusion. He said it was like a fog had descended over his mind. He knew he was supposed to be going home, but the concept of home felt abstract, like a word he knew the definition of but couldn't connect to an actual place or feeling. He got to the airport and saw the canceled flights on the board. Instead of trying to rebook, he felt a strange, inexplicable pull to go the other way, to get on a different flight, to go somewhere else, anywhere else. He couldn't explain it. He said it was like his internal compass had been shattered. He'd spent 2 days wandering around the Singapore airport in a daze, his phone dead. He'd sit in the food court, vaguely aware that he was supposed to be doing something, going somewhere, but the destination was a complete blank. Then, he said, this morning, as he was staring out at the tarmac, something shifted. It was like a scent on the wind, a faint but familiar smell of his own cologne and our laundry detergent. It was faint, but it was there, and with it came a sudden, piercing image of my face. It was so vivid, so clear, it broke through the fog. "Home," he'd said out loud to himself. "I need to go home, to Maria." He'd found an outlet, charged his phone, and the first thing he did was book a new ticket on the next flight out. I looked around my filthy, beautiful house. I looked at the man I loved, safe and sound across the table from me. I never told David the whole story. I never told him about Madame Zora, or the cracked photo, or the phantom footprint. How could I? He would think I was insane. I just blamed it on stress and jet lag, and he accepted it. But I knew the truth. As he went upstairs to shower, I walked over to the front door and picked up his sweater. I held it to my face, breathing in deeply. It smelled like him. It smelled like the path home. From that day on, I never ever washed the floors while he was away.